All right, and welcome to NDI November. We're in week 2 of NDI November. We've got webinars every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We've got giveaways. We've got so much amazing stuff happening. This is our 3rd annual NDI November, hopefully the first of many. And I'm really excited about today's show because today's show is we have Cody Kleven from NETGEAR. And the reason why I think this show is so important is because we've been big fans of NDI since the beginning, going back 5 years. You know, from the very beginning, it was an awesome thing. We loved the idea of getting rid of the traditional wiring and routing and using your existing network in order to send video signals and control signals, both two-way communication where every NDI device could see every other NDI device. But it kind of came with a little catch, and that gotcha is you had to know how to configure a network properly. And a lot of people either didn't know how to configure a network properly or didn't have the right switch for the job. So the reason we're so excited to have NETGEAR on here is because they actually rose to the occasion and came out with switches engineered for AV over IP. So I want to introduce Cody. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
Cool. Now, Cody is what would you say, you're director of sales, but you're also on the product management side of this whole thing. You've been with NETGEAR from the beginning of when they decided to get into this AP over IP space. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. You know, I came on board with NETGEAR back in 2019 when our SMB product group, so the team that builds commercial grade switches, was looking to, kind of find new applications and grow new spaces, and they identified AV as a market or a sub market that probably uses more,
Guys,
or the market's growing more quickly than any other space for managed switches.
All right. So we have not only AV over IP, but you're optimized for NDI, and NDI is a show. But I put this little slide together, and it's kind of like the big question, why did NETGEAR come out with NDI IP optimized switches? Now, I can tell you from the first day I heard NDI, I was begging Dr. Cross to give us a list of certified switches, that we just tell people to go with. And he said, we're agnostic, we're not doing anything. But what he was really saying is, I'm waiting for someone to actually come to us and ask us how to do it right. So before we go into everything that NETGEAR does right, I want to talk about what the problem with was a traditional switch in an IP or an NDI environment. You had these managed switches required IT expertise to configure. They had non-graphical or clunky or even command line interfaces that made setup difficult. NDI over IP is tricky, complex, and prone to issues. The more NDI devices, the more likely to have conflicts. And number one, IP video was like sticking a square peg in a round hole for traditional IT departments. So that's my kickoff to you. Talk about how you convinced your own management to jump in and do what is I can't say enough about the M4250 switches. They are the number one tech support solution we go to. We love them. We recommend them for all our studios going NDI. It's the real deal. They work fantastic. Tell us how we got there, Cody.
Yeah, well, going back, to 2019 or even before that, before I came on board, again, NETGEAR kind of got into this AV space as a means to grow their managed switch business, and NETGEAR as a company is very well positioned for this space because, of course, our roots are in connected home, wireless routers and products that go to consumers, very non-technical people who are trying to set up wireless access points and such for their home use. And so, we kind of started venturing into this space and realized that managed switches was a growing thing, and having this retail background and building products for non-technical people, it was a natural progression of us, right, to make what are traditionally complicated layer 3 switches specifically for the AV community, which, as I think most of us know, right, most of us didn't get into this space because we wanted to configure network switches or sit in an IT closet. We got in this business because we wanted to build broadcast studios, or because we were audio people, or we wanted to do conference rooms. We wanted to, exactly. And so this is a market full of people who are experts in audiovisual, right, but not necessarily IT. And our product manager, Laurent Messia, back at Infocom in 2019, he started working with some different manufacturers and speaking with them and a lot of the integrators who I knew in the space and quickly realized that perhaps the biggest blocking factor, the biggest bottleneck to AV over IP, whether it's JPEG 2000 or NDI or Dante or whatever it is, right? The biggest bottleneck is expertise with configuring switches, and as you alluded to Gary, one of the biggest tech support issues in this industry is troubleshooting the network. It's not the devices themselves, or the image quality or anything like that. It's the networks. And so a big reason for our growth is while we've also focused on nurturing relationships with like yourselves, Broadfield, and some of the integrators who are doing these projects, we've also worked closely with a lot of the manufacturers in the space too to better understand their protocols, better understand the nuances of what their products are trying to do. And we formed relationships with companies like PTZ Optics and Bird Dog and NewTek, and probably 2 years ago or so started trying to build profiles and make our switches so that way, an AV professional could go on site and very simply configure those switches for NDI workflows. And so we first introduced an NDI 4 profile in the M4250s, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, and then quickly followed it up with NDI 5. And we did this with collaboration of, again, NewTek and VizRT and Bird Dog and PTC Optics and a lot of those other brands that Broadfield's representing.
Cool. Now, our show on NDI November reaches two audiences. We reach end users who'll be using NDI, and we also reach dealers who are selling products, that use NDI. And one of the things I want to stress here is by it being a number one tech support solution for a dealer, it also means that your configuration is not only going to be easier for you to set up and configure, but it's going to be easier for you to support your customer with. Less can go wrong. It's easier to train someone to use it. And more importantly, it's real easy for you to get it fixed if the guy hits some buttons and goes wrong, which you know what happens. House of Worship is a typical example. Everything's set up and someone comes in who thinks he's a smarter whiz kid or whatever, who's home from his college break, hits 3 buttons, and Sunday, service starts at 10 and at 9:45, everyone's panicking. And the beautiful part about these switches is you can save exactly where you were and come back to it, but also you can change it so easily. So I really want to talk about that support aspect of this, because not only did you build a better mousetrap, you realize that the people using it, you wanted them to be as least technical as possible to be able to get the most out of it. Now, I'm not trying to put down techie people, but I'm saying creative people want to create. And the less time they can spend on the technology, the more time they can spend using the technology, the better. So not only do you guys have great support, and by that, I want to talk about everything you've got. I want to talk about your ProAV design team. I want to talk about how you reduce the setup time. I want to talk about the educational resources you have on your website. And then I also just want to talk about the wider range of capabilities there. But I think the place to start is the ProAV design team, because not only did you guys, I said it before, built the best mousetrap, you built a superior switch for NDI. You've got a whole group of people listening to people who are using it. And I think what's so cool about that, not only are you troubleshooting for those people, that's where future features, revisions, tweaks, and things and products are coming from. So I talked a lot, you take it away. Tell us a little bit about that whole area of support, which I think is so critical to the success of the NETGEAR line.
Yeah, it's been interesting these last few years. So about 3 years ago, we formed our ProAV design team that you had referenced, Gary, and this is a global team of very technically competent people. And we built the team globally, even though North America was kind of the first market to really take off for us. We built the team globally so that way it didn't matter what day of the week or what time zone somebody was in. They had resources who were very technically competent, but also understood the nuances of AV and understood what makes AV traffic on a network different than perhaps IT traffic or loading websites or sending email. And so we built this team. And by the way, this team is willing to help anybody, whether you're an integrator or end customer. They can be reached at proavdesign@netgear.com. You just send them an email and they'll respond, usually within an hour or two. They can answer really simple questions like, hey, I need a 8-port switch with PoE Plus that works with this particular NDI device, to much more complicated projects where if you have let's say you're building a new facility, a new church, or redesigning the infrastructure there, and you need somebody to help build that design or validate that design, they can certainly schedule time with you to do a call. So it is a great team, and it's been interesting too. I was honestly worried that as our business has skyrocketed, that the number of calls into this team would skyrocket at the same rate. And because we built these 4250s, which are so easy to configure, once people get their hands on them, they get accustomed to it. It's nice that our tech support's actually maintained pretty consistent. Because like you said, Gary, they're so easy, and they really do reduce the number of support calls. So,
and I think, Cody, I think we can't talk about ease without talking about the GUI and the configuration tools that you guys put together, because in all honesty, people are going to get spoiled. And 2 years from now, they're going to think every switch had a graphical interface to set up, and it was a piece of cake. They're going to forget how hard it was just 2 years ago, where, like I said, sometimes it was command line, it was clunky interfaces, it was very hard, and it really took someone who had not just an IT background, but almost like Cisco certifications or NETGEAR certifications to really configure a switch. But that's not true anymore. With the good, clean interface you have that's so intuitive, and with the presets, the profiles for what you're using, you can go to town on it. And, we're talking NDI, but you can get a profile for Dante, and you can have the switch have a little of each also. So there's so many cool things you could do. Now, I'm seeing that we're having some questions that I want to bring up right here before we go deeper. And so, do you require NDI cameras to be on their own subnet?
we don't require NDI cameras to be in their own subnet. It's part of the reason that we built these profiles, right? You can have other devices on the network switch, but we built, actually, that's a great snapshot there, Gary. So you can have multiple VLANs, you can have multiple devices on the network, and regardless of what what you're looking to put on the network switch, right? We've got a profile to make that configuration really easy.
Yep. So we could have an NDI section and a data section from the same switch. This was animating at one point, but it's not anymore, so I apologize. Another question someone asked is, Pedro, how can I calculate the number of NDI devices I can connect to a PoE switch? We're going to get that to a little later, and we did a show on the NDI device where we talked about, but there's a total power consumption, and there's the power per device that we can get into. So I want to jump into that a little bit, and let's jump to terms that people need to learn on this. So you have PoE over Ethernet, which is different types of power per connection. So you have PoE, which is 15, PoE plus is 30, and PoE plus can be 60 to 100. You have total power delivery. If your total power delivery is 240 and you have 15.4 watts per channel, well, you just divide it out. And then you have SPF, the small form factor pluggable transceiver, which we really love because that's how you can interconnect multiple switches using a much bigger 10 gigabit pipe on that. So I just want to jump into the terms because I see where the questions are coming in from. So to jump on that a little bit, but I also want to talk about, we have a new software that's come out that's called NETGEAR Engage. Now that's another tool that sits on top of the current interface. I want you to talk about that a little bit. And I also want you to, I want people to know this is the first version of this. There's going to be a lot more features added as we go, but talk a little bit about NETGEAR Engage, where it is now and where you want to see it going.
Yeah, for sure. So for those of you who are tuned in, you're probably getting a sense of a theme right here with NETGEAR and our approach to AV is we're trying to make everything simple. We're trying to reduce support calls, trying to speed the amount of time reduce the amount of time that it takes to bring a site up and running. And so we created this easy to use GUI, right? This easy to use interface with profiles, and you can, again, if you want to create NDI profiles or Dante profiles or control network profiles, whatever you want to do, you click those and you apply it and whatnot, and that's been really good. But this feature kept on coming in where people were like, hey, we want a single pane of glass for all of our M4250s on the network. Or we want this easy to use interface that you've developed for the M4250s. We want that for your M4300 series, which is another line of managed switches that we offer. And so we brought this platform to market. We just made it available about a month ago. It's called Engage, and it's free to download. It works on Mac OS and Windows, and will eventually be available on Linux as well. And if you go to netgear.com/engage, you can download it, install it, and it will actually go out and it'll detect all of your NETGEAR M4250 and M4300 series switches that are on the network. And it'll give you that single pane of glass for, deploying firmware updates, seeing a site topology of how all your switches are interconnected together. It'll allow you to, create a profile once. For example, maybe it's your NDI profile or a control network profile, and apply that to all the switches on your network simultaneously. So again, like the idea is to really speed deployments, minimize support, and make it easy for people to deploy NETGEAR switches. Now you would ask, like, where is this going? It's a great question. I don't even know that we fully know where it's going. We introduced this as a free piece of software to get people's feedback, to understand how they use it. I'll tell you, in the medium time frame, our goal is to have this cloud managed, so that way you don't actually have to be on site, but there'll be some software or device that's actually on site with the switches that'll communicate outside the firewall and open up a connection, so that way you can remotely configure or remotely support your NETGEAR managed switch installation.
So I want to interrupt here because I think this is a good point that you just made, and that is that with this tool now, I could be a IT administrator for a school district that has maybe 10 schools in it with 30 or 40 switches deployed that are NETGEAR switches. I could be maintaining them all either from my central NOC or in the cloud in the future from my home, from a device. And I think it's very important because we know over the years that some of the biggest objectives or roadblocks to NDI being used in schools and government agencies and in corporate has been the local IT department. So now we have a better switch that's optimized for it, that's easier to maintain and set up, and you're giving what I'm going to call enterprise level tool sets to the IT directors so they can manage multiple switches from on premises or down the road remotely. Way to go. You guys are just always thinking ahead. I love where you're going with this. So Cody, I think we should jump into the product line a little bit. So I'm going to bring up the slide. The product line really breaks into what I consider to be three pieces. We're going to break it. We're going to have the base piece, which are the latest ones you introduced, the desktop switches, which we think are super cool. They're smaller. We've got guys putting these into flight cases so they can take NDI on the road with them. We've got people using these for small studios, people who are taking AV conference rooms and turning them into video studios, because that's where we're going with this whole thing. Or what's very interesting too is a lot of corporations say they had a whole floor and they were using the whole floor. They realized not everyone's coming back. Why don't we turn this one office into a studio where we could do sales training, we could do CEO could do pitches, we could shoot our own commercials, shoot our own new breaking videos or whatever we have to do. So we're seeing that so much video is brought in-house, and this is a great inexpensive way for a company to bring it into their corporate video and just have these switches complement their existing network. They don't have to do anything but have one network port in the room, plug this in, and now we can set up a whole mini studio around it. So this is the first level of stuff, but let's go into the meat and potatoes line, the core 4250 line, the products I fell in love with. And let's talk about that because we're at $600 to $1,200, and these switches are, I'm going to say it very simply. If you're planning on using NDI and you're not looking at one of these switches to build it around, you're making a mistake. You don't have to have one of these switches, but if you use one of these switches, your life is going to be better. Your system's going to work better. It's going to stay up better, and maintaining it's going to be easier, and scaling it out as you grow, because we all know once you start with this stuff, you end up with a lot bigger and a lot more than you thought. So talk about this product line specifically with the switches. And I'm going to tell you, I really love the middle one because I love what it's giving me. It's PoE Plus. I'm getting 240 total watts, and I'm getting the two, 10 gig hookups, so that to me is the go-to switch that I tell people to recommend. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, for sure. And the models that you have up right now, those are all, generally speaking, they're eight port PoE Plus or PoE Plus Plus switches in the case of the one on the far right. And you're right. I mean, a good range of PoE budgets, price points. The one on the very far left, the 4212P, that's actually our hottest seller. We sell the most of those. It only has gigabit uplinks. It may be enough PoE budget for the devices that you have in that room. It is rack mountable. But yeah, if you need that 10 gig uplink or more PoE budget, the middle one's a great option as well. And as you had on the slide prior, it's kind of those are like the little
Yep.
brothers of these switches, right? They are 8 ports, PoE plus. The one on the right has 10 gig uplinks, and we did to I think the point you were making is we introduced these because we had so many applications where people they didn't necessarily have a rack in the room. They just wanted a small form factor switch they could put underneath the table or in a
Yep.
fly kit or wherever. And it's important to note too that even on the smallest switches, these are layer 3 managed switches, right? These are not low cost devices that you might buy at a local retailer for basic data connectivity at your office. These are layer 3 switches. All of these switches are designed for AV over IP. They have non-blocking backplanes, which means you can't oversubscribe them with bandwidth. Even if you had
Yep.
NDI cameras in every single port, right? They're not going to start smoking on you. But yeah, all of them are great options. And yes, we sell a lot of them. The rack mounts are nice when you have these fixed installations. You don't have to worry about things moving around
And
and
I
whatnot.
think one of the things you talked about, and I don't want to scare people off, these are very sophisticated pieces of hardware that come with an easy button that makes them really easy to set up and use. So you're getting professional level switches just because it's easy to use. You guys have sacrificed nothing. These things are built great. They have great capabilities, features like you were talking about there. And that's why I guess we weren't prepared for this, but we got blown away by how many people are like, oh, this is all great. Get me 24, get me 48 ports, because people are like, I'm going to throw out my whole switch. And even though I'm only building one studio, I'd rather have your switch running my whole enterprise than what I have now. And we have found so many corporate houses of worship, especially, who were frustrated with their own network that had, before they even put video in, they were frustrated that things weren't working right and stuff like that. Schools also, they said, just give me the biggest, baddest managed switches we can get on that. And that's where, the 1440 of power, 24 PoE plus plus for under $2,000. That's not just a phenomenal switch. It's a great price for what it delivers. And you have your whole ease of use GUI feature set. So these are just brilliant. Just another, kudos to you guys. You've just delivered not just a product, but a product line that really makes NDI, IP over video, and switching in general easier, better, more capable, more expandable, more stable.
Well, yeah, thanks. And as you had mentioned, Gary, sometimes we talk about AV over IP so often that we overlook the fact that these are managed switches too that sometimes get deployed in IT environments. And you're right, maybe the most common environment that these are deployed in both capacities are in the house of worship market, where there's a network to run, there's your normal data traffic, but there, of course there's AV devices as well. And these are very, very capable switches that can absolutely handle both.
Now, we love them. And I'm going to go through these. I don't think we're talking about, we've got on our websites and on our product pages and in prior videos that we've done where we go through all the features of all these, comparing them. But I'm just going to let people take a look at them, leave them up for about 10 seconds each, guys, if that's okay. So just people can get a little look at that. And I'll go to the next one too, so they can see all the stuff with the price points and where we're at and pick the ones you like. We've kind of highlighted the things that we wanted to bring to your attention on that, but that's where we were going with that. So we've got the thank you sign, but we've got some questions that I want to go into, and this is really great. One is what is AVB support, and is it required?
Yeah, I'm glad that was asked. So these switches support AVB, which I could be mistaken, but I think it stands for audio video bridging, and it's been around for quite a while. It was brought to market by Biamp, but there's other companies that make AVB devices as well. And what makes AVB unique is it requires some special sauce in the switch, in the network switch, to make it work. So not just a special configuration. The switch actually has to be designed and specified and licensed to support AVB. And you'll know if you're doing an AVB project, right? You'll know, right? The AVB devices will specifically be classified as such. And all of these M4250 series do support AVB, but an important caveat is that you have to have the corresponding AVB license. So this is the only license that we sell for in these switches. We don't sell layer 3 licensing or anything like that. It is an additional license, and there's a specific SKU for each model. So if you got an AVB project, just make sure you got the corresponding license. Then you'll get an AVB profile. Back to the profiles, you'll actually get an AVB profile in your configuration UI for those ports that have the AVB devices.
Now, a question we didn't get that I really thought we were going to get was talk about Dante, because where video is NDI and it's got some audio, we all know if we're doing a theater, a conference center or something like that, Dante is the audio and Crestron's the control stuff. And that's all part of these as well with profiles also. Can you talk about that a little bit? I know it's the NDI show, but these switches do so much more.
They do. They support Dante. We've worked closely with Audinate on our configuration profile. You'd mentioned Crestron. We are the recommended switch by Crestron. We're actually hanging out at Crestron Masters just a few weeks ago in Orlando. It's very easy to, just like we mentioned the NDI profiles, we have profiles on there for Crestron NVX, for Dante Audio, for AVB that we just talked about. All those profiles are there to make it easy for you.
Very cool. I want to thank you. This was a great show. When we were putting this together, I said the goal is to get it between 18 and 30 minutes. We did just that. We're at about 26, 27 minutes, so great job. Want to stress again, the NETGEAR M4250s are our #1 NDI tech support solution, and they are easy to configure, set up, optimize, and maintain. And if you're designing a studio, an enterprise, a company, you're putting video over AP into your system, you will be thanking us if you go with these NETGEAR switches. They will make your life better. And I don't say that too often about the products we sell, but these really will. It's our #1 tech support solution for NDI, and our NDI world has gotten, we've been able to get a lot more aggressive with some of the suggested configurations we put out to our customers, because we understand now that we don't have to worry about the switch being the choke point for their success, or that we're going to be on the phone with them for 3 hours helping them support it because some volunteer came in and clicked 3 buttons and made the whole thing go kablooey. So this is the part of the show that's, I always like to end the show, and I always like to give my guests, take a few minutes. The floor is yours. Talk about anything you want to talk about to sum up the show, and then I'll come back, thank you, and we'll sign out.
Yeah, sounds good. I just want to thank Broadfield for hosting this. You guys do a phenomenal job. It's always great seeing you out in the field and at events and working with you and your customers. So again, pleasure doing business with you. I really look forward to growing the business with you in 2023 and bringing to market, great NDI and network video products.
Awesome. And we want to thank you for being on the show. NDI November. Now, I want to remind everyone, go to NDI November and register. We've got free gifts. Oh, wait, I went the wrong way. I'm sorry. We're floating through this because this is my mistake. Packed with webinars, which we talked about before the show, three each week. We're going to have a Tuesday webinar with me, a Wednesday spotlight on a dealer end user workflow that they got, and then Thursday, some more spotlights on some more other product lines. We've got some amazing gifts for those people who register. If you register at NDI November, we're going to be giving away a BirdDog PCZ camera, Wirecast Pro, a JVC camera, a Huddle Cam, a new Blue Titler, New Tech University, and everyone who subscribes will get the unofficial guide to NDI by Paul Richards, a little booklet that we have there. I want to thank everyone for signing up for NDI November. I want to thank everyone for participating, and I want to thank you for being on the show. They got the book for me. You want to throw it to me? Let's see if I can catch it. Live TV. Here we go. Live video. This is the booklet. It's a great little booklet. It's written real easy to understand. Paul Richards is really good at putting things in easy terms that people can understand. If you register, you're going to get a copy of this book free from us. So we thank everyone for being on the show. Cody, thank you so much for being on the show. You were one of our favorite guests with one of our favorite products. Like I said, I love these things. I know I sound like a shill for you guys, but it's made our life so much better as a reseller and distributor who's supporting people who put this into end users and stuff like that. Great job. Thanks for being on the show. NDI November, folks. Cody, thank you so much. I'll be back next Tuesday. We'll be back tomorrow with more NDI November goodness. Peace.
NDI November is going on all month long for all things NDI. Your one-time registration gains you access to all the informative webinars with great guests and tons of giveaways. Check out the full schedule and register at ndinovember.com. Giveaway prizes include BirdDog P100, JVC PZ200N camera, Telestream Wirecast Pro license, New Tech University class, and more. See all the giveaway prizes and register now at ndinovember.com.